In turn, I actually wrote a list of privileges that white people have, or that I believe white people have. So I've not shared this with Tim prior to the podcast, so this will be the first time he's hearing this. But actually want to hear whether you agree or not, because I think that some of them might just be from my perspective. So I'm going to go through the list and then let me know what you think. So the first one says, white people. So quick disclaimer, I'm going to use by and large for all of these. I don't think any of these are absolute. But I would say and another disclaimer is that I think that most, if not all of these privileges pertain only to white people in Western society, right? Which says a lot, I think. Okay, so the first one, white people by and large don't have to worry about being discriminated against in the workplace for their ethnic background. So this is presupposing that affirmative action isn't existent within any given company, right? So what do you think to that?
I think that if you are a minority, you will be targeted some way, you know, whether it's whether it's actually materialized and people are actually saying something and bullying and things like that is another thing to be said. But I think if you are in a minority, no matter what color of your skin, so if I'm in an all Asian company and it's just me there, then there will be some sort of discrimination, given the fact that I'm different to everyone else. I think that exists. Yeah, so I agree with that.
Yeah, I mean, I think you raise a good point there as well, right? So it depends on what environment you're in. If you're living in a Western country, you're more likely to be predominated by ethnically white European people, right?
Exactly.
So the likelihood that the owners or the upper management resonates with white people more is higher, right? So I think you raise a good point there. And even if we instantiate a white person, European person living in India, then there's a pretty high chance it'd be discriminated against as well in comparison to the ethnic minority living in a Western country predominated by white people, like white. Okay, interesting. So the next one I had was okay, so again, I think a lot of these pertain to just European culture, right? White people, by and large, will never be as discommoded by racial epithets hurled in their direction by a complete stranger in any part of the world.
You're gonna have to translate that. Those big words for me. The epithet.
Okay, white people, by and large, will never be as disconcerted by racial epithets. So someone hurling some insult at you that is attributable to
okay. Yeah, I see what you're saying. So someone says, like, calls me a honky on the street, basically.
Exactly.
It's not going to bother me that much.
Huh?
So basically, if someone calls me a honky on the street, like for me, or for like a white person, it wouldn't be as insulting as if someone had.
The idea is the likelihood of that ever happening is slim.
True. Well, so I think this actually goes back to the first point that, okay, so if we're talking about the Western world where it's mostly dominated by European, Caucasian descent, so there's a lot of white people around, no one's hurling insults at the majority. Like, it just doesn't happen, you know what I mean? Like, but I swear to you, if I go to Peru or something like that, everyone's calling me gringo and blah 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 blah. It comes back to that group dynamic.
But wait a minute,
if you're different from
calling you a gringo isn't based on your race, is it? I thought that was based on
absolutely no, that's based on you being white. That's what they call white people. Really? Gringos. Yeah.
So an African American from the USA would never be called a gringo?
No, they would not call you a gringo.
Okay. I didn't know that. because
They would maybe call you the other thing. I don't know. I think they have their own words for that.
there's a
I'm
similar.
sure they got words for you too.
Trust me, yeah. But I mean it has different connotations, right? Like there's a similar word in Spain. They call people, British people, giddies, right? And it actually, I remember, because I had a Spanish roommate, and I asked him, who does this word refer to? And he says, you. Like people from the Netherlands, people from Germany, all people from Northern European countries, including the USA and Canada and Australia and New Zealand, who speak English with fluency, right?
Yeah.
So you're saying that the word gringo does not have the same connotations, right?
No, I'm saying
all I'm saying it refers to the color of your skin as well.
Exactly. I'm saying if you go to somewhere where a white person is the minority, they're going to have names that they might call you out and say, "Oh, look at that gringo," or whatever. Just as if it were to happen vice versa in the Western world. I think it happens a little less. I mean, that's a big speculative statement, but yeah, that's what I think happens. I think if you are in the minority, statistically speaking, you will be targeted far higher than if you're in the majority, racially speaking. And so to go to your point, if someone in England called me a honky or something, I would probably laugh and think that was hilarious because it's not insulting at all. But if you really are the minority and you already do feel left out and you do feel disconnected from the majority of society, then that insult's going to sting a lot more. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Because they're highlighting all those thoughts that you have already about your circumstance. So yeah, so I do think it'll sting a lot more because it's confirming all your isolation, your disconnect from the main tribe, so to speak.
Cool. Okay. So then you agree? Then you do believe that white people are less likely to experience that
In the Western world, yeah.
Okay, in the Western world.
Because white people are in the majority there.
Right. Okay. So the next one I find rather interesting, and again, pertains to living in the Western world. So white people, by and large, can manifest unbridled pride about their own provenance or ancestry in public. I think that one clearly relate. Again, if you're living in India or China, I think people are gonna speak more proudly about their ancestry. I think I'm just imagining a situation where it includes people who are not white, right? So anyone who doesn't derive from a white European country would feel somewhat disconcerted about talking about their provenance or ancestry in the West.
Yeah.
So
yeah. So if we keep it into the West, yeah, I think that's right. I think as well, if you immigrate here or you're quite different, there is a bit of a natural inclination to adapt to your group and the group that you're in. I mean, we both know that you live in China, I live in England, and there's been probably adaptations on both of our parts to not stick out as much, even though for someone like me, I'm American, obviously I'm quite proud of where I come from and the country that I've been raised in and everything else. Even despite that, I've adapted to English society, to some of their cultural norms and their.
Have you?
I've tried to stay strong, obviously, and not do that, but that's quite yeah. So for me, it's there is a bit of that. I think everyone tries to adapt to, and I think if you come from even more, obviously, I look like a lot of English people, probably a bit better looking, to be honest, but I'm joking. But I think I do fit in a lot more. So that adaptation was that pull to adapt. It was a lot
do you believe
weaker for me than it would be for other people. Yeah.
Sure. So do you believe that English people um, by and large, would be more receptive to your culture?
Yes,
And why?
because I think
Okay,
it's more relatable.
okay. So do you think
You
that
know,
English people would be more receptive to, let's say, an Eastern European country, like a Belarusian or Ukrainian? Do you think they'd be more
so
receptive to those kinds of people than people from outside of Europe?
So that's a really good example because obviously we're keeping this on racial
Right,
lines in
right.
Eastern Europe. Obviously they're very white. You see Ukrainian, they're very white person. You know what I mean? However,
Ethnically, yeah.
the cultural differences there are quite stark. And I know for a fact, you know, living in England for 7 years now, that Eastern Europeans, there is a negative stigma. There can be a negative
Well,
stigma
well,
attached
I
to.
think the negative stigma pertains to immigration, right? So I think it only really
Yes.
relates to those countries that um, consist of people who have immigrated to the UK. But I've lived in the UK all of my childhood, and I've never met a
Yeah.
Ukrainian or a Belarusian or a Latvian or Lithuanian
But
living
you've met a
in the
Polish
UK.
person.
But I've
You've met a Polish
yeah,
person.
Polish, but that's a bit more central, right?
Yeah, but they're kind of Eastern European, and they're the ones maybe more specifically. 'Cause you do get Romanians,
Right.
Bulgarians, Polish people. You know, I've had many experiences
But
with
but
them. I
but
mean,
just geographically speaking, Poland
mhm.
is just a bit more central than, let's say,
No, no,
Belarus or
but the
Ukraine.
but the point is that they're white predominantly,
Right.
and yet there still is a negative stigma attached to them, which basically I'm kind
Sure.
of
Okay.
breaking down
Okay.
the idea that is there white privilege? Well, not really. I think it's really based on your cultural um, value structures and things like that. Where and by the way, you know, I love Polish people. I think they're awesome. They're obviously very, very hardworking, but
Hmm.
it is the negative stigma is based on like you said, immigration here, just like it would be in America for Mexicans. You know, Mexicans, the stereotypes there that they work really hard, and you know,
But
they
I think when you talk about people from these countries, it seems as though you're just relating to the stereotypes that people have of people from
yeah,
those countries, right? Which always relates to immigration. So um, an
not
American,
always.
well, I think in the examples that you've given, they seem to relate to immigration. So Polish people, right? Again, diasporas of Polish people live in the UK. Same with
Hmm.
Romanians, right? So
Hmm.
I instantiated Ukraine and Belarus because I haven't ever met a Belarusian living in the UK. They probably exist, but they're probably not as predominant as Polish or Romanian. So they're
Okay.
ethnically white. But my question is, do you think that people would be more receptive to people from those countries where whereby
Because they're not in England
yeah, because
in
the
large numbers.
right, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. In fact, I think if you're completely novel to someone in it, so for example, if you live in England and you have a ton of Polish people around you, you might develop a positive or negative stigma either way, and you start to form certain preconceived notions about whatever person, type of person, racial identity you're seeing all the time. Now, if you see someone just completely random, like a Ukrainian, you're like, I think that novelty will lend itself to curiosity rather than discrimination or stereotyping or anything like that.
With a white person, right?
Um,
Is that what you're trying to
yeah.
say? So you
Well, I'm using your example as
okay.
Ukrainian. So if I saw a Ukrainian and I never seen a Ukrainian before, I would be more pulled by curiosity than discrimination.
Okay. But I'm not asking
And
you, right? I'm
yeah,
saying, do you think that more
hmm
people in England, um,
hmm
mostly white people or people who identify
hmm
as white, do you think they would be
hmm
more receptive to someone hailing from Belarus or someone hailing from fucking Tanzania or something in Africa?
don't think so. I don't think so. I think England is a little different. Some of the European countries can be a lot different to somewhere like America, to be honest, where we
Okay.
don't get just because you guys are exposed to so many
Yeah,
other
yeah.
cultures
Right,
all the
right,
time.
right.
So seeing someone from Tanzania or Belarus might not invoke such a strong response as it would in America, where we are very insular.
Yeah, I think America is a
Uh,
different ballgame, man.
it's a different ball game, yeah. So I don't think an English person would respond more negatively from someone from Tanzania versus Belarus
Okay.
based on the color of their skin. But that's my fairly ignorant opinion on that. So
I
who knows?
mean,
I mean, it completely depends on the person. I mean, if you go to
right.
somewhere, you go to some, what do they call the kind of the far right group in England, they're
Mm.
probably going to have a more negative response to someone from
I think
Tanzania
they'll have a
because
negative
they're
response to anyone, right?
well, exactly,
Yeah,
exactly.
anyone who's
So,
not British.
exactly. So, yeah, that's probably. I mean, yeah, yeah, I could go to other places with that, but we'll stick
Yeah,
to.
yeah. Let's try to stick with the idea of privilege, right?